increasing minimum wage. You just said how the owners will not be able to pay their employees if they increase the minimum wage. That is not true because if they increase the minimum wage, the owners are getting more money by them coming in, so they can pay their employees more. Some people cannot afford to go to college, so they cannot get a higher paying job because they can't afford that education, or they may just not be smart enough to get the education. So they have to rely on those minimum wage jobs. So even though they shouldn't have to rely on them, they do. So they have to be able to live on some sort of money. So they have to work those minimum wage jobs no matter if they want to or not. So that the money should be increased because they need to be able to live and survive, get food and water and shelter and clothes, the necessities of life that they need.
Thank you.
My name is Lynn Grizzard, and I'm debating the con side of increasing minimum wage. They brought up a good point. Some people can't afford to go to college. Some people can't afford to risk what they have to go to college, but from personal experience, I can actually relate because my father, my mother, and also my stepfather all came from a family of poverty. They all were lucky if they had electricity to wake up to. They all were lucky if they had water. They all were lucky if they had a meal on their table every day. They did not get financial aid from their family members. They didn't get financial aid for college, yet they worked. They worked to get a professional job, to be well above average salary today in America. So it is very possible if you try and work hard enough to get out of the poverty line, not just relying on a minimum wage job. Now, also they brought up that a lot of people work over 40 hours. This is actually a false accusation of minimum wage workers. 2/3 to 3/4 of minimum wage workers actually do not work over 35 hours a week. So with that being said, most of these workers are working part-time jobs. So the question you have to ask yourself is, does this hurt or does it help the economy? At first it may sound like a great idea. More money, everyone's happy. But as the saying goes, you can't always judge a book by its cover. So let's break down our workforce. According to the American Action Forum, about 3.2% of Americans that get hourly wages actually get paid the minimum wage. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, only 2.9% of all Americans right now are getting paid minimum wage. So is this actually affecting a majority in our country? Almost 80% of the minimum wage workers, which are already talking about a small percentage, and 80% as of right now are not in poverty. They're being supported by other financial aids. And according to the National Review, the majority of minimum wage workers are 16 to 24 years old. This is around high school and college age. So this means that they are more likely to be supported by financial aid from their family. So is this really greatly affecting our poverty-stricken families of America that we're trying to target? Another noteworthy point is that companies would have to pay workers more. This may sound like a great idea, but once you get the $10.10 minimum wage, add on Obamacare, which is going to affect in the next few years, add on benefits, pensions for retirement, things that companies should offer to their workers, they are going to end up paying towards $12 to $15 for each worker an hour. So with that being said, they're going to have to go into action and do something about it. They're going to have to find solutions for this. One of those could be raising the prices on their products up, which affects all Americans. So we're back at the original problem. Are we really making progress, or are we just going back to stage one, the origin of this problem? when young people get the mentality that they don't need a professional job, that they can go off of a minimum wage entry-level job, then are they going to want a professional job? This leads to the downfall of industries and fields such as the healthcare field, where we need people to support our country, to keep our country healthy, to keep the people healthy. So if people keep in an entry-level job, that's just going to decrease the mentality that they want to get a professional job. So now we go back to the beginning. Does it help or does it actually hurt our nation and our economy? Thank you.
My name is Zoe Moraine, and I am pro increasing minimum wage. Alright. In conclusion, raising the minimum wage would be good for families. It would raise the income of nearly 17 million Americans. It could feed 17 million children. Since women usually get paid less than men, they particularly would benefit. Many single women today are struggling, and with an increase in minimum wage, they can feel more independent, get back on their feet, and maybe get enough to go to school and get more education to get a job that pays enough for them to live on. But they'll still need to have enough money to live off before they get a good enough education for them to get paid a good amount of money. We could better the economy raising the minimum wage. If people made more money, then they could soon retire, go back to school, or have children, which could lead to more job openings. 3.8 million workers were paid minimum wage in 2011. Those 3.8 million barely have enough to pay bills and gas. Increase the minimum wage would increase the standards of living for millions of people. Think about the 17 million children who don't get enough to eat because their parents can't buy them food. Think about the women who unfairly get paid less than men. Workers in America deserve more than $7.25 an hour.
Okay, I'm Sydney Smith, and I am arguing against the increase of minimum wage. Okay, as they stated, they said that it would decrease the amount of poverty, but I'm going to put it in perspective as how it will work. So you'll have somebody working at McDonald's getting paid minimum wage for flipping burgers. So if we increase the minimum wage, they're getting paid more for doing the same job. But say they're doing a good job and they are going to get promoted. But if they get promoted to manager, then they're going to want to get paid more. So then we have to increase the price of, or the amount of money that they're making. So they're going to be doing more work, but if they don't get paid more, then what will be the point in it? So then how do we get that money? Then McDonald's, they'd have to end up raising the prices of all their food, or even cutting jobs, which will increase the amount of unemployment. So that leads back to the point of, you say that all the children that aren't getting their food, but if they're getting paid more, then they're still going to have to go and pay more for their food. So that probably wouldn't really solve the problem of unemployment or them not receiving the food they need. And I would also like to state that there has not been an argument stating that the increase in minimum wage increases the number of unemployed workers who are searching for jobs, because as I stated, in order to get that money, we're going to have to cut the amount of jobs for that one person get paid more, or just pay more and increase the prices in the products that we receive. So in conclusion, increasing the minimum wage would not decrease the amount of poverty or help our economy in any way, as we are already in debt. So in my opinion, we should not increase minimum wage. Thank you. It does not reduce poverty, it increases unemployment, and it hurts small businesses. Increasing increasing minimum wage does not encourage education or job training for those employees at poverty level. It only affects a small percentage of minimum wage earners. Raising the minimum wage affects everyone and not in an overall positive way. So those who went to college, they worked hard for that, and then it's not really fair for them to be getting paid the same amount for someone who may not have worked hard. So for those who went to college and paid for that, then they need to, once they've worked hard for it, then they go and they get the money back that they've worked for and put into college.
Now, just take a moment or two and y'all can just kind of free for all. If y'all want to go back and forth, if anybody would like to just freely talk, you may spend a few times freely talking as I get my thoughts together. Audience, y'all continue to listen.
Okay, so they reflected a lot on the women of minimum wage, who work minimum wage. Well, out of these single parents, out of these single families that they're talking about, let's put it into a perspective of reality. So 80% of the minimum wage workers are below or not below the poverty line or at the poverty line. They're getting financial aid, as I added. This means 20% of minimum wage workers, which is already a really small fraction of our country's workforce, there are actually not a lot of women. Two-thirds of the people in poverty are not single families. Around 2/3. So this means that only about 1/3 are actually single families in poverty. This means that a very small fraction is actually going to benefit from this. And also another point to bring up, everyone knows how far our country is in debt. We went into a recession in the past years, and we're still trying to get out of this. And we're still trying to get on top to where we need to be. Well, is really increasing minimum wage, is that actually going to benefit? Is that actually going to put our country more into debt, or is it going to put it above, or is it going to increase the debt? Are we actually going to benefit? Is our economy going to benefit? Because right now, we're so far into debt, if we pay any more for our minimum wage workers, then our country as a whole is not going to benefit from this. This 2.9% of our workforce, not even all Americans, just our workforce, is going to benefit from this.